is like only being able to view accomplishments as self-worth is a big issue. And yeah, early success is a major factor of burnout as well, because like, for example, cadet winning gold, junior winning gold, and then everyone's really excited when you have potential. But when it comes down to it, when you're a senior and you stop winning, that can lead to burnout, because you in your belief systems are, I've been winning golds before, but now I'm not doing as good. And these are the psychosocial stresses which really just start to break down the human body, physiologically speaking. So I talked a bit too long about that. So I'd like to go through my failure as a person and influence. So being good at judo, especially in my little ecosystem, really meant that, people did, like kids especially, look up to me. And I was very focused on winning. It's always just winning. And it's something like I got to work on. And I still like spending a lot of time focusing on kindness. And, because as a judoka, the only thing I valued was strength, how good someone was at the sport. And that in itself is a toxic culture, because judo is for everyone, not just for those who are good at it. And this was at the cost of my own body and health, and which meant that I still forced myself to compete and train with broken elbows. I had a broken elbow for 2 years before I got it fixed. Burnout is a real problem.
Kai, just on that, just a quick question. So you kind of said that you've had this broken elbow for 2 years. Was there no point in that you had other people, like maybe parents, family, or people outside of the sport that said, hey, consider giving it a break? Like, what is it about athletes that has them persevere through burnout?
So my surgeon told me I'd never do judo again when I was like 17. And I literally just metaphorically gave him the finger. I mean, everyone was telling me to rest. Everyone was telling me it's too much. Like, I fainted at uni because of overtraining. And so I went to the hospital, and they said my pulmonary function was at 20%. And I was like, that's bullshit, because I cycled here, I'm fine. And they were like, then they showed me a chart where they were like, this is where a normal heart function is. Yours is like way down here, because you're just exhausted. So I'm pretty stupid in that regard. But that's the thing, the body is a pretty amazing thing. And if there's hope, anything is possible. If you believe like something, you can put your body through anything. What was harder for me was sitting in the chair and not doing judo. That was a lot harder than training through a broken elbow. It's very different. So when we talk about burnout, as we were discussing before, but not with everyone else, but it comes down to a feeling. And this chart, we can kind of look at as our personal self-worth. So at the pinnacle would be for athletes like competition success. Like the feeling of traveling internationally, going to compete. And then, when you finish, when you retire, everything, or for example, as a cadet, you win a gold and then you start not doing as well. These are all things which contribute to burnout. So it's a good way to visualize it. So this is the environmental success working model. So when we look at an ecosystem, because we got to view ourselves as, fish in a pond. And success, especially within the pond of Australia, is a product of the organizational development and especially the culture. So we have cultural artifacts, which are things like, for example, if we were living in Japan or Russia, and there's so many Olympic gold medals, that affects our beliefs in how we should be performing in competitions. Espouse values as well is culture, like what is valued within the social environment we're in. If everyone only values medals, we are also going to value medals and strengths. And basic assumptions is that, hey, so for example, when you join the team, like for example, representing Australia, we kind of assume, I was like, oh, like if we come up against a Japanese or Russian opponent, you know, it's a subconscious belief that they are going to be really strong. And it's the Russians and Japanese belief that, hey, this guy's probably not very good. And so it really does come down to our subconscious beliefs based on the ecosystems that we're in. So it's vital for anyone, like any organization, to understand this ecosystem and the importance of their organizational culture, because it affects our value system. And as we know, judo is all about our values. So the preconditions, you know, coaching, management, training, accommodation, finances, they're all necessary for talent development and people development, but it doesn't guarantee success. So when we look at organizational culture, this is where the previous generation is highly important. It's probably one of the most important things because it affects the basic underlying assumptions of an athlete's, like a youth athlete's, perceived fate. Like, where am I going to be once the second they start, like retirement starts getting closer, you know, you look at the previous generations, where are they? And it's like, am I going in that pathway as well? That's where, like countries like Japan, they have the police force, they have, you know, company teams. So if you're not national level, there's still pathways to go into, which, you know, they don't have to stress about it. That's how other countries reduce burnout, because there's a clear and good path. You have a stable job, you can still do judo. Whereas Australia, it's you're in or you're out. And that's what contributes to burnout, and which stops a lot of athletes, myself included, from continuing it, because when you don't see a future, you lose hope. So going back to judo and character development, because I strongly believe that developing an athlete is developing a strong character. So when we talk about holistic and ecological approach to high performance development, it's basically creating an environment to produce strong, resilient people. And so the focus should always be about developing the organization, how the organization functions in order for peak performance. Having one star athlete is like dropping like a shark into a tank, and there's, you know, nothing for it to eat. It's just going to die, which is what happens with a lot of our great imported athletes. So coming down to judo and how we view the sport and each other is, I like to look at it as comrades. You know, we're sent to another country to fight, to represent our country literally in battle. And the difference is that it's a responsibility and an opportunity. But when we come back, people don't really care. So that is also a main factor in burnout, because with the Australian system, if you are forced to either, you know, if you have to leave the sport to work, but there's no benefits of being a vet, like having military discounts and stuff, it's different. Unless you make the Olympics, which is, you know, then it's something which is always there. But it's both a responsibility and an opportunity.
Hey, Kai, just a quick one. We've just got a question from the crowd. So you were mentioning the Japanese company judo system. Some similar systems exist in Italy. We've got the Bundesliga in Germany. Do you have any ideas for how we could have, I guess, alternate pathways for competition judoka in Australia, or like a multi-tiered system?
See, that's the thing. First of all, it comes down to marketing. Like for example, Judo Australia doesn't really support how to say, like they don't have pathways to feed the athletes into building Judo Australia as an organization. So that's why when I say comrade is like, only your comrades, you've been through the same thing, you understand what it takes. So shouldn't the organization try to keep your comrades together, because only your comrades know what you've been through. So I definitely do believe marketing, for example, judo in schools, to create more opportunities for growth for judo and education and jobs within the sport. I see some questions in the
couple of comments.
Yeah. Okay, so that's why I believe, the main focus and research is just like what kind of training, etc. But peak performance does lie, and also like peak performance is basically not burning out. If you can keep an athlete in the sport, they're going to do well, because, and if they're happy in the sport, if there's hope. But if the ecosystem doesn't allow them to grow that big, they're going to have to leave, which is the issue. So the environment has to be conducive to a great athlete. And it's important to let young athletes know that it's not going to be easy. Choosing judo, wanting to be an Olympian, it's a lot of people have a misconception that, myself included, I thought once I reach a certain level, it'll be easier, but it's really not. So legacy, peak performance, that's where the previous generations, like it's kind of strange sitting up here with like the guys, I used to look up to as like, my Batmans and stuff, because they were symbols. And that really influenced like me as an athlete, because I wanted to follow in their footsteps. So this is kind of summing up my research in terms of the ecosystem, organizational culture, and its role in burnout, especially in peak performance. If we're trying to build strong people in judo and outside, on and off the mat, we really need to have a lot more focus on not just Judo Australia, but how we are running our own clubs, our own little ecosystems we have. How are we influencing it, which is kind of the main topic.
Fantastic. Thanks for that, Kai. I think good takeaways around burnout being more than just overtraining, and it being more about the ecosystems that you find yourself in. And the other key takeaway is, there should be other pathways. So how can we create alternate options? Not everyone's going to be an Olympian. Maybe not everyone wants to be an Olympian. So what's that B, C, and D path for people in the sport to try and prevent burnout? Thank you so much for that first introduction. Next, I'll hand it over to the first Batman of the evening, as Kai referred to them. So we've got 𝗦𝗢𝗖𝗓𝗓 here, who'll be speaking to us about the joy of judo independent of results. Thanks, Matt.
Yeah, so hey, thanks, Kai. That was really useful. Did a really good job. So good job. Yeah, I thought what I'd talk about firstly is just following on from that kind of burnout what Kai was talking about. What I might do is just share a little bit about my judo journey and share about some of the problems that all actually lead to burnout, and actually how to kind of remedy them at your local club. So whether you're a parent, coach, manager, support staff, wherever you are, you can kind of start looking at some of those athletes and start going, okay, hey, what are you doing with that injury, with that broken elbow? What are you doing with this strength conditioning program? So I kind of show the problems in my career and the remedy of how we can fix it looking back over my career. So I started judo at 5 years old, and by 6 years old, we were doing tournaments essentially every month. So 10 to 12 tournaments a month. We drive to Sydney and do the St Mary's RSL judo tournaments each and every month. And my brother and I, we won straight away. And so already I can think back over my judo career, and there's hundreds and hundreds of kids that were part of that system that are no longer a part of that system. And it's because what Kai had at the beginning, either early success, and when it starts getting hard, they quit, or they were doing judo 10 years and they quit because they've been doing competitions for 10 years and they're over it. But I somehow, maybe I'm just crazy, but stuck with it and actually got through that kind of period. And I was talking to Nathan Katz at the Nationals about it, because he also started comps at a young age, going, we're the only ones left out of the hundreds that have quit. So I know the Judo Australia and the coaching talk about the long-term athlete development. Kind of, you know, so the first things first is I don't recommend kids at 5 years old doing 10 tournaments a year. Okay, so if you do that, just kind of dial it back a little bit. It's about fun, technical development, fun, fundamental motor skills and that sort of stuff. So it was then when I was about 12, I was in a highly competitive club where everyone was trying to make the Atlanta and the Sydney Olympics. And I think at the Sydney Olympic team, I think my club had 5 or 6 players going. So it was just highly competitive. And so when I was 12, I was like, I want to go to Olympics for judo. That's what I want to do. And then from there, I made the junior national team, senior national team, worlds, and then I qualified for the Olympics in Beijing, and then just missed out on London by a little bit. I never fully really got burnt out, but there was times where I was like, why am I doing this? Why am I in Japan getting bashed every day? My body's sore, but I had a goal of like, I want to get somewhere. So, but for me, I didn't really get burnt out until after my judo career, and I'll talk about that quickly. But one of the biggest things I had, and I'll just share them now, is like injuries. Like you know, by the time I was 21, I had 5 knee operations because either no one really followed up on, hey Matt, you got a busted elbow that Kai's got for 2 years, or you got a busted knee or whatever. So now I just kind of, so yeah, 5 knee ops by the time I was 21, due to bad 𝗦𝗘𝗓𝗔𝗟. So don't teach 𝗦𝗘𝗓𝗓𝗔 wrong. And secondly, just bad rehab, trying to get on the mat too early, training too hard, not having a strength and conditioning coach looking over your strength and conditioning program, coaches just doing randori 5 nights a week. All those sort of things add up to just breaking your body down and then injuring yourself. Also, our club had a culture of that injuries were kind of a badge of honor, that when you're injured, it's because you're training really hard, and that's what tough people do. And, you know, everyone's taped up overseas, they're all broken, and that's where you got to be too. But you actually look at the professional leagues like rugby league and AFL, and if they're injured, they're like, mate, 6 months off, rehab this thing, because you're an investment into long-term athlete development, not break the horse and just replace him with the next one, you know. And in the stacked divisions like 66, 73s, you can replace them with the next one because they're really tight. But so just if you have athletes in your club that are injured, always say, have 1 month off extra. Just come and do randori, or not randori. Come and do technique, crash mat throws, whatever. So that was the first one for me. Just kind of have the culture of long-term athlete development, not break your body into the floor for 3 years and then you quit because you're completely broken. And now, as a parent with 3 kids, I love being able to play on the floor with the kids and enjoy them and that sort of stuff. Where if I kept going another few years, I may be really broken. So that's kind of a cool thing. Another thing is pain, just pain from training camps. I remember just at AIS camps, just doing sprints in the morning and then 2 hours later doing 2 hours of randori, and then get back again in the afternoon for more 2 hours randori, like 7-8 days in a row, and you're absolutely broken. Just coming home from training, sore everywhere, cramping everywhere, crying in the shower, going, I'm in so much pain. You know, the remedy, structured programs, allowing rest days, allowing stretching, listen to the athletes. If they're all walking around and mopey, they probably need a day off. They're not weak for having a day off. They just need a session off and that sort of stuff. So just kind of listening to the athletes and that sort of stuff. Another big one that will, you know, led to just a really stressful athlete life is making weight, cutting weight. So once again, a lot of clubs have a culture of cutting weight. The bigger you are, the better you'll be. I kind of have a saying now at my club that if I can't see your abs, then you can't cut weight. Like if you don't have abs, you can't cut weight, because most overweight people are cutting weight. It's like, well, hang on a minute. Watch your diet first and then cut weight second. We also have a cutting weight policy. No one above 15 can cut weight. 16. But even then, parents just do whatever they want, as much as you try to kind of educate people and whatever. There was one tournament we did in Pan America where I literally went down 3 kilos, up 3 kilos, 4 tournaments in 3 weeks. I went up and down like 12, 15 kilos in 3 weeks, binge eating, binge drinking, all that sort of stuff, just because of the stress of just making weight and viewing food as like, not as a healthy lifestyle, but as a fuel to just make weight or not make weight. So you kind of see that in the bodybuilding. You know, we all have a friend that used to be a bodybuilder. Now they're 40 kilos overweight because it just destroyed their idea of what food actually is for. And so really important from, and you know, I had a seminar in Queensland, and someone asked me about dieting, and I kind of just told this judo coach that nearly every judo coach in Australia is not a nutritionist and a dietitian, and they have no right to tell you anything about dieting. Like, you know, and all the dieting they give you is just don't eat this and sit in the sauna for 5 hours. So I kind of was like, yeah, look, that's stay in our lane. We're judo coaches, and outsource the other stuff to people that are professionals, and that sort of stuff. So weight, and that's why I love, we need weight divisions. It's the best part about kids judo, but I hate weight divisions because it destroys a lot of people. So when I first cut weight, probably 13. We were pretty young. I reckon that sorry, the question is, how well were we when we started cutting weight? Probably 13. Cutting weight might just be like missing food for breakfast, lunch, and dinner to then make weight the next day. But sauntering, I probably didn't sauna until I was 15 or 16. Did I have abs? All of them. Oh dear, that's funny. Sorry. Yeah, so really important. And that, you know, cutting weight just leads to eating disorders long term, that sort of stuff. So something to really touch on is that we live a healthy lifestyle. I don't follow a diet, I live a healthy lifestyle. So really important. And that's from coaches down. So usually a lot of athletes watch coaches. One of the biggest ones as an athlete is just the pressure to perform. You know, like when you're number 1 on the points table, you might get more funding to then go overseas, which is what you want to do. So the pressure to constantly perform can just beat you down. And when you don't perform, you're like, oh my gosh, I missed out on that trip to go over there. And so it's just really, really mentally wears you down, which then kind of, firstly, it stuffs up your technique and like development, because you're always in randori shiai competition mode rather than I'm going to take the next 6 months to just work on my technique. There's always a tournament coming up, which just, you're always doing your A game. And so you just kind of just wear yourself down. And which then leads to sleep. So I went to the dentist. I go to the dentist all the time, but maybe 5 or 6 years ago. And the dentist was like, have you taken a lot of drugs? I'm like, no. He's like, have you had a really stressful life? I'm like, no. He's like, have you had any trauma in your life? I was like, no. He goes, all your teeth are destroyed. Like they are cracked to pieces. And I was like, oh, I was this athlete for a long time. Like I was pretty stressed. He goes, well, your teeth are cracked to, and I was like, I grinded my teeth every night. My wife would be like, what the heck's going on to him? He's just grinding because of the stress of just overtrained, the stress of sleeping, listening to those rain apps, the meditation apps just to try to get to sleep. And my teeth are destroyed just from the you know, and then you're overtrained. You always got the sniffles. You're always, you know, how often have you trained with a sniffle? You couldn't do it these days, but athletes are always just, I just got a question. How did you find peace of mind when you finally realized that you were burnt out? So for me, this is just, I think, overtraining, but I will fast forward then. And I'll just finish with this and then I'll answer your question, Hunter. Having no money is a really big stress. Like so we worked 3 jobs to pay for trips. Back then, Judo Australia used to pay for your trip and then you'd go and do it and then you'd have to pay them back, which is really cool. I don't think they do that anymore. But then what happened was when you're overseas for a month, you know, you still got expenses at home. So you come home, pay off the trip, get the next trip paid for, and then, you know, so that sort of stuff. But working 3 jobs just to pay is really important. And then for me, just the identity issues, what Kai talked about is that everyone knows you as the judo guy or the guy trying to make the Olympics. You kind of have that social credibility when you go to parties that you're the judo guy, that you got a goal where all your friends kind of just doing whatever, but you're like the cool guy trying to chase your dreams and travel the world. And it is cool. But also when you fail at that, it's like you fail at life, which is really important. And I know when I tried to make the London Olympics and I missed out, me and Arnie Dickens were so close in the world ranking, but he beat me in the last tournament. I was so sad. And then my pastor at church was like, Matt, we like you for who you are, not what you're good at. And I was like, oh, people actually like me for me, not just because I'm good at judo, but people that like me for good at judo because I'm good at judo, they're not really my true friends anyway. You know, they're just kind of like groupies or whatever. They just hang around you because they get social credibility. This is my friend who's trying to make the Olympics. So that was a really big one for me. And so really just talking to your athletes saying, hey, what are you doing after judo? What are you doing for uni? What's your long-term goal? You know, you can't do judo forever competitively, but now we've got people like Evo, myself, Brownie, running full-time facilities that we can make an income from. And you can say, hey, you can actually, you know, run classes at my dojo, you can get paid for it. And then maybe one day run your own, that sort of stuff. So, yeah, but just always focusing on that kind of their character development, who they are. So, and yeah, and then why am I still here? I'm still here teaching judo because judo's done so much for me, both with my confidence and just all the people at my dojo, the friends I've made, the places I've been. But more importantly, at my dojo, there's kids that have been bullied, that are withdrawn, that are just you know, getting beat up at school and whatever. And they come to my dojo, and within one term, they're different children, you know. And the parents are like, man, the culture here is positive and amazing and awesome. And it's got nothing to do with judo. It's got to do with culture and character development and that sort of stuff. So that's why I'm here running my dojo, because I love it. And I hopefully I'll get some Olympians, but if I don't, no one cares, you know, literally no one cares. And the funny thing is with competition is we had a jiu-jitsu tournament recently, and my coach took some of my jiu-jitsu kids, and he came back from the tournament and said, Matt, we need to do more randori. We need to do more this because the other kids are way better. I was like, no. Don't rate our kids based on as even in the jiu-jitsu, they're like, oh, let's up the randori, the sparring because of tournaments. I was like, no. That's not what we're about. There's a different class for that, but it might not be this one. So really focus on who your athlete is as a person. Who are they? Really focus on their mental health and that sort of stuff. When they're injured, chase them up. I remember having a knee reconstruction. I was gone for 12 months. No one rang me. It's like, Matt, where are you? Where have you been? Or it was like, where have you been for last year? I'm like, I had a knee reconstruction. I was gone for 12 months. They're like, oh, we're wondering where you were. It's like, you didn't think to call? I was a #1 funded athlete and no one called me to see how I was going. Like, yeah, so, yeah, I might answer some questions now if that's okay. How did you find peace of mind when I was burnt out? I think when I got burnt out after running my dojo, I was running some tournaments and whatever, and I got just super burnt out because athletes are high capacity. We can put up with a lot of stress. We can do a lot of things ourselves. And after burning out, where I had not a mental breakdown, but a burnout, I realized that I had to do some kind of internal searching on the inside and reading a few books. And I realized, one, I was a bit of a people pleaser. And so if you please everyone, you end up burning out. Secondly, I wasn't very good at asking for help. And so I did everything myself, which also leads to burnout. And yeah, I think they were the two main ones that made me, they were the character flaws in myself, Hunter, that I then had to address. And now I'm getting better at saying no. I'm getting better at asking for help. And in doing so, it helps me not get burnt out. And so that also leads back into identity. So, you know, Matt's high capacity, you can do so much stuff, blah, 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 blah. But really on the inside, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm hanging on by a thread. So now by asking for help, by saying no to people, and just going, oh, actually, I'm not going to do that. Like, it would be good to do that, but I'm not going to for these reasons. I can kind of protect my mental health and make sure that I'm all okay. Because when you run a dojo, there's lesson planning. You got to kick people out of the club. You got to train up coaches. You got to, kind of massage the culture, and you got to tell people they've bashed up the teenage kid too hard and they're not to do that again. And there's actually a lot of personality and discussions you've got to have between people. So that's kind of how I got peace of mind, is kind of self-reflecting, journaling. I read a book called Emotionally Healthy Spirituality, which really helped me understand myself and who I was and that sort of stuff. So Darren just asked how much weight. Oh, these are direct messages. So maybe I'll just answer these via direct message. If you want to move on to Evo, there's some questions here that are on direct message. So I can just reply via direct message and then we can hear from Evo.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you so much, Matt.
No worries.
Yeah, thanks for I guess in summary of the key takeaways I've gotten from that is remember that athletes are people. As a coach, you can break that culture of injury as a badge of honor, so make sure you do that. Listen to your athletes, go stand in the showers and see who's crying, but make sure you give them some time off as well and remind them that that's okay. And finally, value people as more than just athletes. They're more than just the judo girl or guy. So find out about those other things that make them interesting and remember they're a valid person.
Yeah, that's right. Can I just say, sorry, Heidi, I was just going to say that heaps of coaches only talk to their athletes about judo, and that then reinforces the culture of, I only care about you about judo. But it's actually like, how's your girlfriend? How's your boyfriend? How's uni? Are you getting your assignments done? Actually be a part of their world. And do you know what? You are a part of their world. Like, actually like them and be a part of them and actually go, oh, you're injured. Like I just said to someone in direct message, you're injured. Come to judo anyway. I'd love to see you. Like, I actually want to see you. You don't need to do anything. Just come along, and I actually like you. So really treat them as people and really encourage those outside of judo things. You need friends where the social circle is, I've got to train. Got this tournament coming up. I've missed weddings, funerals, birthday parties, everything because of judo's everything. But you know what? Judo's this competition is like this big and your life is this big, and family and friends are there forever. And so you need to always look after those things. They're the ones that are going to pick you up when the system or you lose the tournaments burn you. They'll always be there to help you. So it's really, really important. It's not all about judo. It's not all about competition. So thanks. Evo, want to hear what you got to say, buds?
Awesome. Thanks, Evo. Taking up next, talking to us about every athlete dies twice, judo beyond the first death. Thanks, Evo.
Can you hear me, guys? Yeah, cool. All right, so I may touch on a few of the similar things to Matt. I'll probably follow a similar structure, my judo journey through the years. Some highs, some lows, some things that triggered it, some things that helped, that sort of thing. I'm admittedly a judo coach, not a Zoom guy, so I'm going to try and do a share screen for the first time. If it goes to poo, I apologize in advance, but hopefully Xavier can share the slides and stuff. I did a rough, sort of PowerPoint sort of thing to go through bit by bit of my judo journey, and I guess I'll try and talk to that. And if there's any questions, same as Kai, just make them known. I'll try and pop in an answer. It's super blurry. Is that just me? No, maybe mine. All right, just mine. Cool. Let me see if I can share screen.
Super blurry.
Super blurry. Hang on. Where's the camera bit? Hang on. Oh, did I disappear completely?
Yep. It's just red.
Fantastic. See, showed you. Got it.
All right.
No, I'm still blurry. I'll go to share screen. I'll see if I can figure out how to chuck this PowerPoint on here. And then burnout presentation, this one. Oh, I got it. All right, got to the end. All right, so similar to Matt, I started judo about 5 years old. Unlike Matt, I was not a successful judo player when I first started. I did judo and started competing pretty much straight away. I went to 11 judo competitions before I won one match. That was 3 and a bit years of kids judo, of me crying my eyes out and going home and not knowing why I did it and quitting and resuming my judo career every Monday. But yeah, went through, did all the junior stuff with the 𝗦𝗘𝗗𝗜𝗔 when I was 10, 12 years old, did JFA nationals, never won anything, got a whole heap of bronze medals, silver medals. Yeah, eventually when I was 21, I think, I won my first senior nationals, which was a big deal for me back in the day. It was, big, huge thing. Got the opportunity as #1 to start traveling internationally, which is what I told myself I wanted all those years, and finally got the opportunity. I was already studying by then. I was at uni doing a sports admin course. I had a long-term partner. I was working. There wasn't much funding floating around. I get to go to comps, but until you actually won a bit of stuff, you didn't get much help. So I was training maybe 15 hours a week by that age, working 30 hours a week, studying, doing the rest. Sleep was, when it could happen. And yeah, and I'll scroll down to the, where's next? Yeah, by 2008, I was the #1 in the country. You had to do the continental qualifying. There was 2 comps that really mattered. There was a Worlds, but I didn't get a high enough result. Then there was the 2 Oceania comps. First one, I fluffed it, lost semi-final, lost the bronze match. Didn't matter what I went the second time at the second comp in Christchurch, sorry. I missed out. In the wash of that, I also blew my elbow out, had an elbow reco. I, partied a lot, decided I didn't need to do that much judo. I still ran a few kids classes and stuff, but decided I wanted to have a normal life a little bit. Did a bit of wrestling, did a bit of BJJ, because that sort of gave me that competitive fix. But ultimately, it just left me sad. I did change club coach. I added the club coach, sorry. So I started visiting another club, what was now, Resilience and Daniel Kelly and those guys. And that motivated me and gave me the kick in the butt that I think I needed to get my head straight, get me out of the sort of dumps a little bit. And I got back on the horse and started competing again, nationally first. I went overseas. When I first started competing internationally, I was ranked, I think, about number 6 by then on the national points. I had to ask, pretty pleased, to 𝗦𝗢𝗓𝗓, can I go to this competition? And he had to ask the 5 guys in front of me if they felt like paying, I think it was about $7,000 to go to Brazil for that first Grand Slam. They all said no, because that was a big waste of money. I went and I got flogged. But I pushed through and, kept working, kept training, kept studying, doing everything and sleeping maybe 4 or 5 hours a night. And I just had it in my head that I wasn't going to stuff up again. I was going to do this, whether it killed me or not. I was going to go. And I think it's very unhealthy how I was feeling, but it did help me grow as an athlete and as a person to understand hard work and go, you can actually do things that are pretty damn hard and near on impossible. And I qualified direct. I got to go to the Olympic Games and live my childhood dream, which is great. In the midst of that, throughout that period of 2009, 10, 11, 12, there started being some issues around Judo Australia, around the high performance program and stuff like that. And as we all know, athletes are sensitive, the most sensitive human beings that I've ever come across in life. And, if someone said that you didn't deserve to go to this comp and you got picked anyway, or so-and-so, I took everything to heart. And things that shouldn't have had anything to do with me was on my mind. So when I was out there competing, I wasn't just fighting the person in front of me. I was fighting the coach in the chair that I knew didn't like me, the selector at home that I know doesn't really think I'm any good, and all these other things that in reality weren't real, right? They were to an extent. The way to explain it, best way to probably explain it is in our own movie, we're all the main character, right? We're all the lead star. We're all the number one. In everyone else's movie, we're like a little extra sitting at the cafe reading the newspaper, right? We're relevant for a bit of a conversation. They might give an opinion. It might hurt my feelings, but then they'll move on. But man, I took all that in and I drew a line in the sand. There was either you're with me or you were dead to me. And stupidity of a young man, burnt a lot of bridges and created a lot of anxiety around competitions. And then judo, the thing that I loved when I was a kid was going out there and fighting, being with your mates and teammates. It wasn't like that anymore. I had to prove myself. Like I was saying some of those things with the soldiers, like you go on a war, right? A judo match to me, like in that moment, I don't know what dying feels like, right? But in that moment, if I lose to someone, that's what I imagine death feels like. It is the worst gut-wrenching feeling in the world. And yes, it's just a game. It's just a sport. But as an athlete, that's how you take it. And through this period, it was off its head. Like, yes, I managed to sustain it for a period. Like, barely sleeping, studying, working, being broke, doing this, living out of a suitcase. Yeah, I did it. But boy, did I come down hard. I came down at the other end and it all fell apart. Mentally, emotionally, financially, physically, like everything crumbled at the back of that. And I needed to step away because I took too much on. I think I've covered some of this. In that time, I'd started some coaching at someone else's club. There was a jiu-jitsu club with Muay Thai and stuff like that. And I started running some judo classes just because someone popped the option up to me. And I went, that's actually not bad. In that time that I hated competing and I hated the idea of being at a judo competition, I loved still being on the mat with little kids that, like Matt said, they may never compete. They may never want to. They don't care. But that kind of kept me relevant, kept me engaged, so to speak, even though my mind didn't want to be anywhere near competing in judo. In that period, I think I did 1 or 2 comps at the back end of 2012. But I just did it, like I said, because I was comfortable. You know what I mean? Like I didn't like it. I didn't want to do it. It's the truth. And I still did fairly well. Like I did okay. Like I was still physically capable. I was still mentally capable of winning a judo match. But I was there. I was on autopilot and I was in the wrong frame of mind. And then on the end of that, as we came towards 2013, I went, all right, the Com Games is coming up in 2 years. Do I really want to do this? Because I don't want to fluff around and progressively drop and embarrass myself my family, my coaches, the people that value me as a judo player. And I went, no, I do. I really do. And so I decided to prioritize a few things, stop doing as much stuff on the side, and really did knuckle down and have a crack leading into 2014 Commonwealth Games. The selection for that was mainly domestic, which was really good for me because in that period I got married, was trying to set up my life. So being able to work safe, buy my first house, all that sort of stuff, not having to travel all year round was fantastic. So for me, I thought, all right, I'll do this 2 more year block. I'll go to 2014 at 2012 Olympics. I lost to the Great Britain guy, 𝗦𝗘𝗗𝗜𝗔. Close match, sort of. I think I could have won. So I went, no, I'll go 2 more years. I think I can beat most of the other guys. I've just got to beat this guy. That'll fix it. That'll make it nice and clean. Finish off my judo career on a high. Happy days. Judo's not the sport for fairy tales. I blew my ACL 10 days out or 12 days out. Didn't even get to fight. Offered to sign whatever waiver they wanted. I'm like, I'm going to retire anyway. Just let me fight. Like, my leg will fall off. I really don't care. I'm done. Didn't happen. Again, crash. Big time crash. Came out of that injured, came out of that sad, came out of that resentful, came out of that thinking, what a waste. Why did I bother doing all these things? Probably one of the lowest points there, and that could probably touches on some of the administrative ecosystem stuff that Kai discussed. So I got my knee reco August 2014. About November, I got an email from a board member of the Judo Australia, which I sort of don't need to mention, but basically said, hey, are you retiring? Because we've got some stuff coming up for next year and beyond, and we need to know whether we allocate your funding or not. And my response was, hey, I'm learning how to walk again. I have no idea what I want. And it became a pretty bitter reply all email that I regret now, but it's done. We've all been there, I guess. And again, that was a massive kick in the guts. When I was already on the way down, that lowered it even further. And all that animosity that I had about the things outside of judo that I built up in my head is bigger. Like, that was a throwaway email. That person probably meant no harm, but I took it like a soldier in battle sort of thing, right? It killed me. It broke me. I cried open, no problem. And yeah, crashed and burned big time. Decided, whatever, I'm gonna run my club, screw everyone else, I like teaching kids. I liked a couple of white belts I got at the club. That's it. And I started just doing MMA training, which is a strange hobby, a strange thing to experiment with and whatnot. But I did, and I enjoyed, as much as it's, you know, a bit of hindsight now, 2020, but I enjoyed that form of combat and that form of training so much more than judo, because the anxiety, the validation of me as a person wasn't there in MMA. People were like, oh, you do judo, you might be good at this. But if I wasn't and I lost, which I did, it didn't hurt as much. As I'm like, even if people go, oh, you're not good, you lost this guy so-and-so, that didn't hurt. Whereas if I lost a judo match, regardless of what level it was on, it cut me to absolute pieces. So yeah, that cultural stuff and that stuff around the outside, that ecosystem stuff, built up around me, and it internalized really deep, that it made me jaded on the sport. It made me resentful, and it put me in a really negative spot. Go to the next sort of slide. I'll call it phase 4 here. 2018. So by then I'm 32. I had come back, done some comps again. Really didn't care too much for high performance judo. Didn't care for the Rio cycle. Those guys could do their thing. I popped in and did comps where I want, did my own club. Had a serious motor vehicle accident. I had cervical issues in my spine, smashed my foot to pieces, had to have 6 surgeries. I was told a couple of times that walking would be with a limp for the rest of my life. Judo was just probably not going to happen. Be realistic about that. And yeah, I'm a judo player. I'm a fighter, a soldier, I'm a meathead. I took that the other way and I went, no, I'm going to do it. It took me 3-4 years to be able to do any form of judo the way I can now. And that, you know, absolute crushing thing as a person, way outside of judo, helped me, now that I'm back doing some sort of judo, have this whole different perspective. So now I can go to, like Heidi mentioned, I did nationals this year, and I've never in my life lost a match and gone, that was a good 𝗦𝗘𝗗𝗜𝗔 for the other guy, right? Never. But I literally walked off and went, man, that was as good as I had. that guy's a beast, on to the next. And I went, hey, I think I'm actually starting to mature. I think I'm starting to learn some life lessons and put some of that outside noise to the right sort of compartment. That's there. I still like judo, right? I don't like the outside noise. I don't like the coach pressure. I don't like the cutting weight. I don't like all that other stuff that builds up and creates that animosity inside your own head. But I love judo. There is no greater feeling than throwing someone free pon, than choking someone, than arm locking someone. So similar to what Maddie said, there's baggage attached to that when people are like, oh, what if people see you lose? What about this? But the reality is that's other people's baggage. That's other people's image of who you are, right? That's not me. I know who I am. If I walk out and get bronze, 5th place, 2nd place, whatever, I've still got to go and feed 2 kids. I've still got to go to work on Monday. I've still got to go and do all these other things. And that's where stuff like that pathway that Kai was saying, you know what I mean? Like in Japan, there's this, and then you can do this on the way out. There is a safe, so to speak, way to do judo at a slightly lower level where some of those other things are not a factor. If you lose for your company team, I'm pretty sure that's not as stressful as losing at the World Championships with the Japanese backpack on. And I think I'll click over to the next one. Oh, sorry, I've gone to the very end, but there's some stuff we can do out of that I can recommend that I think I'd like to see in the future. But I'll quickly touch on some of the positives and negatives out of my overall judo journey. Hopefully I'm not pushing time too much. Yeah, so basically judo taught me the value of hard work, right? And sorry, is that? Anyway, value of hard work, achieving goals, team dynamics. Like Kai said, we're comrades, right? How often have you been on national teams where you fight and you get a win and you look over and not everyone on your team cheers? That sucks a bit. But then times you've been on even smaller teams, state teams, and you got, random guys you cross paths with 3 or 4 times jumping up and down. That's phenomenal. And that's how you build a group. So judo taught me that. It helped me watch other people flourish, watch my friends, Matt, other guys, see their work come. Even if I don't do well, I really get validation in watching the people I value and the people that I believe in do all these really good things in the sport. Made friendships out of that. What I've been able to learn and what I've been able to develop in my judo life has helped others. I've got students that are doing well. I've got students that compete well. I've got students that have stopped competing and just like hanging out. I've got students that get to a certain belt level and want to go teach kids classes. Great. Instead of having 1 good student, I've got 2 now. Next week I'll have 4. And that's based on me just pushing through and what I've learned in judo. And I guess that's creating a platform too. Negatives. These are the things that suck. Believing my self-worth was wrapped up in sporting results. How often do you go to a judo comp and people talk about the last time they saw you fight? Or where you are on the points table, blah, blah. And again, that's not your version of yourself. That's their perception of who you are. And sometimes they project that on you and it's not accurate, right? Because they only see a snippet of who you are. They see you 4 times a year at comps. They don't see you day to day. And for so long, I wrapped my self-worth up in what other people told me I was as a judo player. Judo politics sucks. National level, state level, international, it's just there. It sucks. But unfortunately, it's always going to be there to some extent. We need to learn to cope with it. Judging, being judged as a person, yeah. Judging others from what I saw. I also cast judgments as people as on others, opponents, other divisions, blah, blah, on what I saw in a 4-minute snippet between 𝗦𝗢𝗔𝗟 and 𝗦𝗢𝗅. That's not accurate, right? It's like judging someone on an interaction you saw when they were out drinking with their friends. Yes, that's a version of them, but that's not who they are. That's this much. But I did for so many years. I saw this guy at a comp, he said this, that means he's arrogant, whatever, blah, 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 blah. And it's not true. And I try not to do that now, but we're all human. Yeah, getting caught up in other people's politics. The us versus them, man. It happens. It happens in your club, let alone in your state, let alone your nation. Nationally, sorry. We don't need to do it. It's other people's fights. You can listen to someone else. Like if Matt comes to me and says, I'm dealing with this, I can listen to him, validate his concerns, give him some advice without turning on animosity towards the other person, right? But I think in judo, especially, you know, the ecosystem I was around, that's what it was, right? It was a line in the sand. You were here or you were there. I don't need to carry other people's stuff, and other people shouldn't carry mine. Because I've had a negative interaction with a certain person, doesn't mean you have. It doesn't mean you have to in the future. Yeah, keeping the ego in check and burning bridges. Yeah, I'm that guy. I did that plenty. Trying to feel it as much this month these days. You know, took me a while to grow up, and I think judo has helped in that. But for a long time, it didn't. It exacerbated, and it made all those things bigger. Like you really are a big fish in a small pond when it comes to your judo journey, but you think it is the biggest thing, blah, blah. And you make these massive decisions on people and situations. They're not right. They're not fair. You don't need to stop talking to someone because they made a joke because you missed weight. Like, it was a throwaway comment, most likely. Yeah. And then I'll go to my last slide because I have no idea where I'm going for time, and I'm not sure if I'm sharing the screen.
You've got a minute left, Evo.
Oh, I got a minute. All right, let's do it. First one's most important. If I don't get to the others, remember that. Athletes are people first. Man, the little kid that walks into your dojo, it doesn't matter if 15 years later, he's a national contender, Olympic contender, and he does something stupid that embarrasses you as a coach, blah, blah, blah. He's still that kid that walked through the door, and he's a person. He's irrational, he's emotional, that sort of thing. He or she. I think we forget that sometimes, and we treat people as, you know, the caricature of what we think they are as a competitor, as an athlete. They're still people. This is a part of who they are. As a coach, I need to remember that, you know, 50% of people that bow won't lose. It doesn't mean you're bad, I'm good. I'm bad, that's not what it means. It just means the other person managed to win. Tomorrow, run it back, maybe it's different. But sometimes we put so much on that win or lose, it's not accurate. There's always another competition. There's always another match. Ethical pathways and fair ones for competitors, that's huge, right? You need to know as an athlete coming through, if you do X, Y, and Z, you'll be given a chance for this and that. And that's not always the case at every level, man. Each state has their own rules around their squad training percentages and blah, 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 and national things and blah, blah. As long as it's clear, we all know where we sit. If I know if I have to win this or get to this point to get to there, okay, I'll be upset if I don't, but I get it. But if I think I've done everything and I think I've ticked all the boxes and you go, don't feel like it, that sucks. So we, as a judo community, could do better. And yeah, last couple, check in on players, offer them different roles within judo. You know what I mean? Look at Heidi, was a competitor, now she's a board member. Awesome. Not the average. Ooh, I've got my son after a bath coming in. Hi, Zach. Say hi to everyone. Good night. And yeah, be a French owner and a gay man. We're all on team judo, right? Everyone else in the world is crap. They don't do judo. We do judo. Whether we like each other or not, we're on the same team. Again, I'll admit, I was definitely one of the worst people when it came to this. I'm trying to do better. And if I can, you can. Yeah, I don't know. I'm sure I've mumbled and gone down a tangent or whatever, but Heidi, what am I doing?
Awesome. Thanks, Evo. Thanks for sharing your story. I think it's really important to kind of have that humility and be able to share those lessons. I think we've all kind of fallen into similar pitfalls in our careers. So it's really humbling to kind of hear that from you. And yeah, like the key takeaways there is death of the ego, get out of the politics and comparisons and just kind of focus on yourself and what brings you joy in the sport. So thank you for that. For the next 25 minutes, we'll be moving on to a Q&A for the panelists. So if you've been submitting questions through to Xavier, he's going to be filtering them through to me, and I'll be asking the panelists. The first question that we've got here is for Kai around burnout. I know that we're discussing athlete burnout tonight, but like a lot of our coaches and administrators, volunteers or otherwise, like, I mean, they're on the mat with us. Do they also experience burnout? Are the causes the same? Are the symptoms the same?
So regarding burnout and just people, it's all relatively the kind of the same model. The difference is it's basically, it comes down, in my opinion, to kindness. How do I annotate here? like the environmental culture, kindness is kind of key, because basically devaluation, if someone works their butt off with no appreciation, you know, you're gonna feel exhausted. Like imagine spending hours putting together something and no one cares or gives you any credit. You're not gonna feel valued, and feeling valued is something everyone should feel. And without that level of kindness and appreciation for your work, you're gonna burn out. And that really comes down to communication as well, especially within like men, is like, you know, we don't really ask for help, or we feel that like we should just suck it up. Whereas communicating that, hey, I'm not okay, that's really important to avoid burnout, because by communicating your needs to other people, that, you know, whether or not they listen, it's what's important. So effective communication is something that I think everyone, like myself included, which I'm really working on, is just effective communication to avoid being burnt out.
Thanks, Kai. Maybe the next question to Matt. Have you experienced burnout as a club coach, and how do you kind of actively stay on top of that, keep energized?
Yes, I think I burnt out. Yeah, just essentially just trying to people please everyone at my club, you know, making sure the white belt partners up with, you know, another white belt, make sure the black belts get looked after and the green belts get looked after, and run tournaments here, run tournaments there. And just as people say, you should run a tournament, I go, yeah, I'll run a tournament. And then you should run another tournament, yeah, I'll run another tournament, and kind of just getting burnt out by the demand of it all. This is my wife, Sam.
Hi.
It's my wife, Sam. She's going to come hang out. And Sam said to me, what is going on? I'm like, oh, I've got so much stresses. I've got to do this. And then we kind of just put kind of parameters in place, read some books, and she's a counselor. So that helps, right? If you don't have a counselor, go get one. But anyway, but actually just, and so she's really good at going, why do you have to run a tournament? Why are you feeling like that? And actually self-reflecting on myself and realizing those character flaws that I have that I didn't know I had, and then trying to work on those character flaws. Just important.
Awesome, thanks, Matt. And one for Evo. Do you feel like you had a support network throughout your career? How would you suggest upcoming athletes avoid the same sort of pitfalls you might have had? What can they control when it comes to burnout themselves?
Okay, so I did, and I only realized this towards the back end of my career. However, it wasn't where you would think. It wasn't my everyday coaches. It wasn't my everyday training partners. There's a couple of, you know, older guys around judo, from not even from my club, that I've known here and there, that when I was out with my ACL and with my UCL in my elbow and stuff like that, they just checked in. And I really found both times, it was two different, one for each surgery. And just, that made a huge difference. Someone that kind of knew who I was, knew of me, and went, hey man, are you okay? I haven't seen you, blah, blah. And it just turned, and I went, hang on, maybe there are people that actually care about who I am as a person. And then I started checking in with some of the people outside of your closer circle, right? We all think about the people we see 9 to 5, day to day, your day ins, day outs. But there's actually people a bit further out that if you do open up, if you do go, hey man, my knee's killing me. Didn't you hurt yourself? Can't you give me some blah, blah? Then all of a sudden you build that network. So it worked for me to have those guys that I'd never in a million years expected to check in on me. Then I started to go, hang on, maybe I should touch base a little bit further out. And that's what I recommend to the younger guys coming through, is tap into the old guy at your club. That old guy who barely does the warm up, who only really does 𝗦𝗢𝗔𝗟 randori and squeezes your head off with 𝗦𝗘𝗔𝗟 for 40 minutes.
Is that me?
I didn't want to point the finger, that is Matt 𝗦𝗘𝗗𝗜𝗓. Check in with that guy. Because there is people around judo that are around judo, especially those old guys, like they don't have a particular goal in mind. They just love being around it. And they look at you. They look at, you know, 17-year-old Kyle with his arm hanging off his body. And they're like, man, if I could give him some of my like wisdom, because I'm old and I know stuff, man, he could really go somewhere. But they won't do it unprompted, right? because there is that caginess. There is that sort of that we're all meatheads. It's judo. We just are, right? Every club, every high level competitor, everyone that's the strongest guy at their club is very rarely in a position to go and ask someone, hey man, I've barely been sleeping. What do you reckon? I just feel like I'm absolutely weak. I feel like I've forgotten how to do 𝗦𝗔𝗗𝗜𝗔. You gotta be okay with being a bit vulnerable, and sometimes it's easier to not be that to your head coach, right? It's sometimes easier to look outside that inner circle and just go to, Kai Ping, who hasn't come to UWA for 6 months or whatever it is, and go, hey man, have you got 20 minutes? And just spew your brains, blah, blah. And they'll probably just validate it and go, yeah, man, that's judo. Let me know how you go on Monday. But that's enough for you to feel heard and for you to go, okay, I'm not a freak. This is normal. Let's move on. Yeah. Reach outside the inner circle, I guess.
Thanks, Evo. I just want to acknowledge as well, we've had Sandro Piccirillo, the Italian national cadet coach, just jump into the conversation. So thanks for joining. The next question that we have is for Matt from Carla Willing, a club owner in Tasmania. What has replaced the adrenaline rush of competition and high level performance since you've left that level?
What's replaced it? My wife's laughing. She's laughing. What is it?
Well, you jumped in a freezing cold river today for 4 minutes. Just cause. Just cause? So.
I think as much as Evo and I, hey Isa, as much as Evo and I, we love judo and we love, I guess I'm talking for Evo, we still love competitions. I'm still a competitive person. So there's an element where it's just part of who I am. I'm going to compete. I'm going to push my body. I'm going to do workouts that make me nearly throw up. I dry retch. I'm just a competitive person. So I haven't replaced it. I still have it. But the difference is, that's why I still do tournaments. I would have done all of them, but I hurt my shoulder at AC Open. But the difference is my identity is not wrapped up in whether I win or lose or not. And so that's the main thing. And I know I fought nationals, I think 3 years ago, and an epic 5 matches. And one of the guy, I think Ben Broadhead, said to his dad, I've never seen Matt look so happy doing judo before. Like just hard battles, just really hard fights, and just go, oh, this is so much fun. Where 10 years ago, I'd be like, I better beat this guy. But now it's like, this is great. And the biggest one was watching the movie Cars 3. I don't know if you've got kids, you might watch Cars 3. And there's an element where at the end of the movie, he says that the reward is just being able to race. Like we look around judo and there's so many older broken people that just would give their arm and leg to do one competition round at the nationals. And I'm young enough, fit enough, and not injured enough to get in there and just have some fun. And, throw out some downgrade points for some brown and black belts in the process. But so I'm still competitive, but it's just the identity is not wrapped up in it. So now when I lose, I laugh like Evo and go, that was a great match. I'm so glad that was fun. Where before I'd be like, next tournament, you're dead. Like, so that's just, I'm still competitive and weird. So thanks, babe.
Thanks, Matt. Maybe I think we've got a translator for Sandro as well from Judo Queensland. So if anyone's got any questions, please pop them through. But for our translator, could we ask Sandro about how burnout's dealt with in the Italian national team? I think Mara is our translator.
Hello, hi guys. Yes, just give me a second because I'm gonna try and message him as I'm responding on the other side. Sandro, if you can hear me, se mi senti, Sandro, vogliono sapere la situazione com'è in Italia sul burnout, l'esaurimento.
Mara, maybe just shoot me a message when you hear back from Sandro. Otherwise, we might just move on to the next one and come back to him if that's okay. Awesome. We've got a question from Steve Brown, I guess to Ivo and Matt as well. You've spoken about competing for enjoyment rather than to win. Maybe it's easy to be nostalgic when you've had all of your boxes ticked off in your career, but do you think it would be kind of like easy for people that haven't been in that position or maybe haven't ticked all those boxes along the way? Ivo, jump in, I can see your hand up.
Yeah, not necessarily the most accurate statement. Like, yes, we've all gone to the Olympic Games and that's what we all, you know, put as the pinnacle. But I will speak for the other guys in the same position. There's no way we've all ticked all the boxes we had in mind, right? Yes, we did go to the Olympic Games and you got a tracksuit and you call yourself an Olympian for life. But like Maddie said, we've all lost more matches than we've won when it comes to fighting overseas. So yeah, it's in a way you can put that label on it, but I don't know about the other guys. I remember the fights I lost a lot more than the fights I won. So it's not that I walk into nationals going, it doesn't matter if I lose, because, you know, 10 years ago, I was really good. No, it does. I don't compute it that way. Maybe Matt and Brownie can add more to that, but it's not that straightforward, if that makes sense.
I can't remember the question.
Do you feel like for people that kind of haven't had all of the wealth of experience that you and Ivo have had, do you think that they could also have that mindset of it's just kind of fun to be here rather than being upset when they're not winning?
Yeah, I think it's person to person. I know people at my club are only competing to get black belt points, and they don't really want to lose. They don't really want to win. They just want to get their black belt, and so that's what they're going to do. So I think it's person to person. I was awesome to see at the Nationals, Chris Swalwell getting in there. He's fought like every Nationals because he loves it. And I go, that's amazing. You know, I think it's just person to person, really. But what I do know is we do have the Olympian stamp on us. You know, like people are like, you're that guy on YouTube. I can't wait to smash you in tournament. So there's that element where there is that little bit of pressure, but that's just because of my ego. And so the people go, what if I lose? Well, what if I lose? Oh, but you know, so it's kind of a bit of an ego thing of what if I lose, you know? So, yeah.
I don't know how you guys kind of feel about this, but I think that when you get to a point where you potentially realize that, hey, I can't do this forever, it becomes, you start to go, I have to enjoy every bit of this because I realize I can't do this forever. And I remember probably my last couple of big international training camps where I had the most fun I'd ever had, because I remember thinking what a privilege it is to be in this place where the only thing that matters today is going to training. That's all that matters. It's a rare space to be in. But I don't know if I would have been in that headspace. And it's easier to take that pressure off your shoulders after a little bit of time. So, yeah.
I think it's also really good to put a date on when your competitive career is up, because there's a lot of players that just kept going and going and going. So we kind of, you know, as a husband and wife are like, Olympics 2012, that's the kind of the cutoff date of when this is, you know, this kind of journey of our life's finished, because the emotional, financial, physical, psychological toll, and then people are just randomly like, so you're going to go to the next cycle? And you're like, you have no idea how stressed I've been the last 8 years. And you're just like, why don't you try again? Like, are you serious? You got no idea. No idea. They just see you at training a few times a week and think that's all you do. So
if you get a couple of good results, what stops you getting dragged back into that loophole?
Oh, and you do, especially when
you go and win a couple.
Especially when the Commonwealth Games is in that second year. It's like, 2 more years of 8 Com Games. 18 more months, Olympics, 2 more years, Com Games. It just starts the cycle, you know. So I lucky Com Games wasn't really around 2010 and then 14. Yeah, so.
Thanks for those answers. I guess kind of building on that idea of identity and kind of like what motivates you. A question for Kai from Jeremy Cade. In your travels and studies, have you come across literature that deals with identity during the transition phase from, I guess, a high performant athlete back into what we're going to call the general population?
Yeah, so basically the European Union has categorized it from the different age groups. So you have like 12 to 15, oh, sorry, like 12 to like 17. So when they finish high school, university, starting their career, and also for like post-retirement. And basically there is a framework. So there's dual career athletes, which is basically what they're trying to emphasize in the system in Europe, where the athletes are prepared. Basically, they are getting ready for retirement at the same time. So that's the point of dual career athletes, where they can do something that's parallel to their sporting endeavors. And that is something which, you know, I like to see in Australia, like supporting dual career athletes where they can pursue something which is like, for example, I chose physiology and sports science because it helped me with my judo. It kind of helped bounce off each other. And that's basically, let me just relook at the question. So post-retirement, it's very difficult. It's very difficult for athletes who made it to the top level. And if they gave their whole life to it, it's something, I mean, that's why there's post-Olympic depression. Like, it's amazing that post-Olympic depression is a real thing, like in the psychology textbooks, where like, it's because being an Olympian is a huge sacrifice. Because the thing is, like, it's something that happens right after you finish, that, you know, people just say good job, and they have this, as Ivo said, you know, this caricature of who you are. And, you know, when you're put up there, you know, you're there for everyone to kind of poke at, because, you know, you're somewhere else. You're different. You're labeled with something that, yes, it's good, but at the same time, you're the center of attention. And for example, the zebra effect, it's a phenomenon where zebras are camouflaged, even though they don't look like they're camouflaged. But the second they would mark a zebra with like a bit of red, they would instantly get killed by a predator, because they were able to, they caught the attention of people who were looking to hurt them. So it's very difficult, you know, being at the highest level and then going into the general population. I hope that answered.
Thanks, Kai. The next question that I've got, I think this is an interesting one. So if you're aspiring to kind of be the best or be that top podium finisher, is it reasonable to put everything into it and make those sacrifices, even if you risk burnout? That one's just to kind of anyone that wants to pick that up.
Was the question, is it worth it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because when you get to the end of your life, you're going to look back over your life and go, we all know the people that you, gee, I wish I went for this, but then I got a job, or gee, I wish I did that, but I had a knee recall and I just quit. I've never met a person that said, I started judo at 5 and I'm so glad I quit. Everyone says, I started judo when I was a kid. Gee, I wish I kept going. And so you got to, yeah, go for it. Because in the end, you want to chase your dreams. You want to chase your dreams and you want to encourage kids. Yeah, it's going to be hard, but everything's hard in life. And do you know what the other thing is, is life is way harder than judo. Stuff happens in life that is way harder than judo. Judo's like, I sometimes see the national team, I'm like, oh, look how cute they are. They're chasing their dreams. They get funded to do it, or that's cute. Wait till you become an adult and stuff really starts happening. Like stuff happens and crap happens in life. So chase your dreams, go for it. Yeah. But if you're aware of this stuff, then this is why we did this whole thing, was so as we start the conversation, coaches are aware of it, and then hopefully burnout won't happen. And so, yeah, chase your dreams. That's what I reckon.
Kai or Ivo, anything you want to add to that one?
Yeah. Oh, sorry, Kai, you go.
I mean, for me, it's just, I do believe in like Valhalla. So, you know, just die fighting for a cause. Just choose your cause.
Kai's a savage. Yeah, I'll say same thing as Maddie, right? Like, yes, we do often, and that's so many people around judo are so resentful and just remind themselves of the negatives they had with their judo career. But the reality is we're all in here for that long. We're all in this because we actually enjoy it, right? Otherwise, we wouldn't have done it. We wouldn't have tried that hard. It is worth it. Yeah, there's a cost, right? Start your own business. There's a cost. You know, start a relationship. There's a cost. Judo just magnifies all that, right? And it just takes over you for that period of your athletic life. But if you come out of it on the other end and can, you know, put everything where it should be in your mind, it will hold you in good stead going forward. Like, I find things in everyday life that I can do, although I don't stress about, that normal people freak out about. But I'm like, well, this isn't as scary as randori with name random Japanese guy who bashed me, like all of them, right? The comparison I think I gave the other day when I was talking to the boys in the group chat about this, I'm like, life is harder than judo, right? I would do 1,000 randoris with 𝗦𝗦𝗔𝗟, the Japanese 3-time world champion, before trying to soothe my son at 3 in the morning when he doesn't want to be fed. Life kicks you in the butt harder than judo ever will, right? But you don't think that, you don't feel that at the time, right? But yeah, definitely worth it.
And I guess the challenge back to the group as well. I guess like it's really important when you're there in the moment, but when would you encourage athletes to kind of step away and stop? I guess we've seen over the years, unfortunate cases when athletes might have taken it to the extreme, maybe taking their life. How would you kind of see the early signs where you say maybe it is time to stop or to kind of reevaluate your priorities?
You go.
I guess, like for me, after my second elbow reconstruction, I mean, I was severely depressed, pretty much just lying in bed for a couple years. And I just picked up smoking. I would just literally, the only reason to wake up was just to grab a cigarette and just sit on the toilet and smoke. You know, that was pretty much it. And no one cared as well. People, it was like, for me, it was just more so I was a waste of talent, which was what was like communicated. It was like, oh, you should have done this, done that. And this is why culture is important. Having a good social network of people to actually say that, no, like you did a good job. Like you're not a failure. Like it just wasn't meant to be. Things happen. And just like if you, the people that we see at the top, you know, when they're not performing and just checking up on them and just saying, hey, it's okay. You know, because the words of like our mentors and the people around us really do impact us tremendously.
Yeah, I think you go, Eva, you go.
So you're talking about the early sort of signs, Heidi, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, like we're saying, you know, it's worth it in one respect for like, you know, your overall life. Again, when you're in the moment and it's all there is that's important to you is judo, when is it okay to kind of stop, or how do you know to stop?
It's individual. Remember, we're all people and everyone's different. But the one that I think probably is uniform across the board, right? If someone doesn't enjoy competing or doesn't enjoy winning, that's when alarm bells go off to me, right? Because regardless of how we get there, different people deal with the anxiety of training and the process, blah, blah, blah. We all want to win though, right? And you do see it. It is disheartening. Sometimes you'll see people at high level competitions, blah, blah. They'll win and they're sad or they're barely relieved. That's where I go, hang on. The balance is a bit off here, right? If it's not worth it to you in that moment, then it's not worth it. You need to either reframe how this is in your mind, or you need to step away. Because if achieving your goal doesn't make you happy, something's wrong. I think that'd be an oversimplification, to be honest, but I think that'd be something.
I thought that was perfect. Like, use the perfect.
Yeah, thanks, Kai. Thanks, Eva. Matt, anything to add on that one?
I think it's just focusing on the athlete's mental health, and then also realizing that you're not a mental health expert. So Lifeline, suicide hotlines, all those ones. If people and actually, as a coach, don't be afraid to actually say, "How are you going? Like, how are you actually going?" Take people out to coffee, talk to them, watch them, and that sort of stuff. Because there could be one phone call away from something bad happening, and so it's really important to just bridge that gap. Is really important. Maybe say, have you just thought about suicide? Just like if that conversation comes up, actually be confident enough to go there. And that's just not judo, that's just in general life, to do that, because often people are throwing out lifelines, but no one's picking them up. And so that's just in all life, not just judo. So don't worry about yourself so much. What do you think?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as coaches as well, have you ever, I guess, done any courses around mental health? Like, how can you upskill yourself the most that you can as a coach and be prepared for those sorts of conversations, because they can be uncomfortable and confronting?
It's probably something worth thinking about.
Sam's a counsellor, so I'm jumping her in, but it's something, yeah, that we're probably all not prepared for, right?
Yeah, we all, like Maddie said, we all think we're experts, but we're not.
Yeah.
We're experts on our life, our experience, and maybe the specific individual. But I know, like with some of my athletes and stuff like that, that I don't have a huge high level program, but I have some guys that are quite competitive. When things have gotten to the point where I'm like, hang on, this makes me worried, I'll go and ask someone else, right? I'll go and ask someone well above my knowledge and then try and frame my approach, because we also, like as judo coaches, we're not just the average mentor. We're not the local footy coach, right? Your relationship with your judo coach is so much more intimate, a weird word to use, but it is like you're ingrained in each other because you guys go to battle, so to speak. Sometimes if your judo coach says something for the right reasons, but in the wrong way, it can have a far more negative reaction than positive. So a few times where I've been in awkward situations where I'm like, hang on, I don't know how to approach it, I'll ask. I don't want to speak out of turn because, like you said, there has been, some real issues with suicide around judo, around high performance sport in recent times, and it's no joke. So we have to be very careful. We have to try and educate ourselves. We can't stick our head in the sand. Not okay.
No, so important. Thanks for that. I'm going to move the conversation now, and I know that we've just hit 9 o'clock for everyone that was joining. So we're going to go for another 10 minutes just while we try and get Sandro's audio connected. But in the interim, we've just got a question from Jeremy. I guess we see a lot of children these days doing multiple activities in sports. I'd say a lot of the kids in your clubs are doing more than just judo. They could be in soccer, surf club, lots of other things. What's your opinion on the right time to specialize in a sport? When is it the right time to sit down with a kid and say, all right, we're focusing on judo, I'd like to pull you in and kind of like make you an athlete?
Well, first
just quickly, are we over specializing? Because I see that a lot in judo coming from other sports. Like I run a club, my kids are at my club 3 days a week, but we've seen kids that all they do is judo and they don't have that pattern of movement that you would expect from a emerging athlete at 12, 13, 14, 15. They don't move right. So are we as a sport forcing over specialization? Like, what are your opinions on those things?
Yeah. So at the Nationals, we have kids under 10s fighting the Nationals. Is that right? So straight away makes, I want my little 9-year-old Jimmy to win the Nationals. And so it's straight, parents have gone, hey, Matt, can you do one-on-ones with my 10-year-old to teach him 10 ways to do COE? Like, no. So yeah, you've got long-term athlete development model. There's play all sports. And so when you play all sports, you develop the athlete, then you teach the sport. If they only play one sport, judo forever, they'll end up hating it. They'll get injuries because you're probably only teaching them to do COE one way. And so they'll, have musculoskeletal imbalances. And so definitely play. I know once one parent was like, yeah, so Connor wants to do basketball on Wednesdays. And I was like, well, the business owner in me says you're going to pay less fees, but the judo coach in me says, are you going to develop more skills for the athlete? So yeah, make him go do basketball. So it's just really important that they do all those sports, 100%. And Heidi, we can't bring someone in to make them an athlete. We can say, you got potential, and they'll go, oh, cool, don't care. It's really up to them to decide. When I was 12, I said, I'm going to go to the Olympics for judo. I was in a culture and environment, but I decided it. And if we decide it for them, they'll quit in 6 months. It's got to be an agreed thing. So that's what I think.
So if I can touch base on that, yeah, that's pretty much the perfect answer. Just many sports help to develop game sense and functional motor pattern skills. You have to specialize. To specialize, you have to generalize these days because everything is kind of pattern recognition. So personally, when I did some like weeks of wrestling, like basketball, I pretty much did all sports growing up, which I think definitely made me good at judo. Functional motor skills are developed in different environments. The learning curve that the brain undergoes when you're in a completely alien environment is pretty big. So definitely put your kids through as many different sports and environments as possible to develop them. but also kind of have to be sure the environments are safe enough so you don't break them.
Thanks, Kai. We will be moving over to Sandro now, just to get that question. So Mara, if you're ready to translate, could we ask Sandro around what's the Italian judo team doing to stave off burnout?
Okay, so I actually have already spoken about 10 minutes with him and I found some information I'm going to share with you. It's a little bit hard to go ask him a question on the other line and then come back and things like that. So hopefully this covers a little and gives you a little bit of what is shared with me. And yes, so we talked a little bit about the fact that now Italy is in a bit of a different position lately because of COVID, with the sport stopping and all of that, and everything restarting just now and the way they're doing it. But it's the way things run over there, like it was mentioned here at the beginning. Xavier also mentioned that in Italy it's the same as like similar to Japan, and in Italy, the young people, like as soon as they turn 18, they can be employed by the military. So they become part of the military, the army team. So they get paid, they have a job. So that's a bit of a safety net. And then they train. They're like now, for example, they just had they've established some new technical centers and things all over Italy, and the athletes there are still, like the younger ones, they're still finding it hard to get them back into it after COVID, but the other ones that are really keen, they are going really well, and it's really much easier to get the training and the support, and when you have more people together, that already helps in itself. And the fact that and they come from all over Europe, they can have all of European, lots of different European days and things. And the fact that wait a second, that I'm gonna go through all of my notes, but what he was saying was like, he doesn't think like what you were talking now, for example, about is well, no, sorry. He was in Australia the last 10, 12 years. He'd been coming to Australia to help out and everything like that. And his impression is like the fact that the Australian kids, they arrive at the competitions without any confidence, and that's because of what we were saying before, that like the negativity that there is around here in the system, the ecosystem of not knowing that knowing that they're not good compared to the rest, and so that they're happy if they win just 1 or 2 fights. They're happy they don't have that big drive because they don't think that they're good enough compared to the rest. And also the fact that he thinks that in Italy, for example, the 13, 15-year-olds, they already train every day. So he, like, I was asking him, don't you think that it's a bit too much? Don't they get to burnout more easily if they overdo it that young? And he said that the training must be well done, of course. It has to be varied and complete. So there's lots of things that you can do in judo. There's all the terminology as well. It's not just about burning out physically, but it's a holistic approach to training. And it was comparing it to studying. So you want to become a lawyer, don't you go to school already the whole day and then you go home and study for hours and hours and hours? So if that's your professional goal and you want to become a professional athlete, then that's the same amount of things that you got to put into it. But it talks about quality and quantity at the same time. So like everyday training is what they do and what he believes in as well. But talking about the financial support, because here it's a bit of a struggle, then he was saying, like, of course it's a really big problem in other countries, like in France and things like that. They got lots of support from sponsors. They get paid, like in England as well, by the sponsors, by other clubs and things like that they do things together. And it's the government, the Judo Australia, that through the government should should invest in the athlete in different ways to support the athletes better. So he's had a couple of people from Australia now visiting there with him, and he's saying like the parents, the family are paying so much to get these girls to compete at Sarajevo, but what are they going to do even if they win there? What is it going to be for the family to keep going a step further after that? And I think that's about it. He talks a little bit more about COVID and things like that and how things are recovering from that, but I don't think that that's what we were talking about here. If you want, I can call it. If anyone wants to ask him another question, he says that he's still online, so he's happy to talk again.
Awesome. I think we've just gone on 9:10. Thank you so much for that, Mara. It's always insightful to kind of hear how other countries deal with similar issues and the different, I guess, socio and political issues that they have there and the way they balance that when it comes to burnout. If there are any other questions for Sandro, please send them through. We'll try and capture them and shoot them out through email. We might just finish the session there tonight. I first of all just want to give a huge round of applause and thank you to all of our panelists this evening. So Kai, Ivo and Matt, thank you for taking the time to kind of share your stories and perspectives with this group. I think there's lots of food for thought. I guess the key take homes being, could your athletes be burnt out? I guess the way to find out is to ask them and have those conversations. They're a bit more than arm barring, 𝗦𝗔𝗗𝗜𝗓 throwing robots. So remember that they're human. Remember that their worth as a person is more than the next podium finish. And for athletes, just kind of be self-aware of that as well. Talk to others, and I guess kind of be kind and have respect for each other as a basis there as judo players. Thank you again so much. If anyone has any questions, we'll be sharing email addresses as well as the online recording for this session following this, so you can continue the conversations. And finally, a big thank you to Judo Queensland for putting on this event and kind of getting us all together for a very important conversation on something that a lot of people have to deal with. So thank you again, everyone. Xavier's
Zoom is messing up, so I'm also on the board of Judo Queensland. I'm the Director of Finance. So on behalf of Judo Queensland, thank you very much to Kai, Ivo and Matt for giving up your time. And thank you very much for jumping in last minute to be a moderator for us as well, given that Paul Nelson is out crook at the moment. So everybody on the call, thank you. Please take as much of this away as you can. Take it to your clubs, take it to your athletes. It's very, very, very important. I didn't have the type of success that Matt and Ivo did as an athlete, but I can tell you firsthand, it is very, very real when you have to transition. And that whole identity thing for me was particularly painful, how I saw myself in the world when I was no longer an athlete. So very close to home. So again, thank you all very much. I think we're done for the evening. Appreciate it all, everybody.
Well done, everyone.